there'll be Q&A from the audience, from the members here, and then Jeanette Rathman.
Hi, Sharon Keller. I really apologize so much for being late. I got mixed up about the time. I was at my mom's house in Dallas. Thank you. Reading writs of habeas corpus, and I was with my little niece, and she said, "What time are you going to be back?" And I looked. Anyway, I really apologize. It's inexcusable. I am the presiding judge of the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. I've been on the court for 23 years, and I've been presiding judge for 17. I ran in 1994 because I thought the Court of Criminal Appeals was not doing a good job. And I was at the DA's office in Dallas at the time in the appellate section. And every week, you couldn't predict what was going to happen in the criminal law. So I ran, I was lucky enough to win. And since then, the court has really turned around. There are 8 Democrats on the court when I was first elected, 1 Republican. We're all Republicans now. And we have a really good, solid court. We've become more conservative, more consistent, more faithful to the law, and more timely. And that is my primary job, is to keep the court on track as far as following the law instead of creating the law. My second job as presiding judge is like the manager of any other business. Somebody has to be in charge of the payroll, oversee personnel issues, decide what kind of copiers to lease, and work with the legislature and other judges in making sure that the court, the business side of the court, works well. As a third job that I take on, more or less voluntarily, is I try to do things outside of the court to improve the criminal justice system. I've been the chairman of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission since it was started in 2002. I'm on the board of the Council of State Governments Justice Center, which is a research and think tank that is a national organization that concerns itself with criminal justice matters. For instance, in Texas, a number of years ago, we were getting ready to build a new prison expansion, and the Justice Center came in, looked at what we did on inmates, parole, and probation, made some recommendations, and as a result, Texas saved tons of money and reinvested a lot of that in treatment beds instead of hard beds in the prison. I like to say that being on the Court of Criminal Appeals is like being having a new baby. You think you know how busy it's going to be, but until you have it, you really don't know how busy or how hard. We dispose of about 10,000 matters a year, which is more than any other appellate court in the country. Most of our docket is, the biggest part of our docket is post-conviction writs of habeas corpus and felony cases, and then we do death penalty appeals. And in that, we're different from any other appellate court because we are the court of return on writs of habeas corpus and felony cases. They don't go through the intermediate court, and death penalty cases don't go through the intermediate court. I am a little bit off track this morning because I'm running late. So at this time, I'll go ahead and take questions. Okay.
Let me, for those of you that are not familiar with the court system, at the trial court level, we have, at least in big counties, we have civil and criminal. They all go to the appellate court, both civil and criminal, but when they go to the Supreme Court, there is the Supreme Court on civil, the Criminal Court of Appeals on criminal matters, and so it's bifurcated at the bottom and at the top, and in the center they come through one court. But I'll take questions for Judge Keller. Kurt.
Okay, my name is Kurt Hyde. I'm from Denton County. My question is, being a person who likes to read a lot, I've read a lot about a thing called the Innocence Project. And I've seen where a lot of particularly men, but I think some women perhaps also, have suddenly been able to truly prove themselves innocent after having been found guilty, and that's how they've proved themselves innocent and they've been released. And would you please comment on the Innocence Project and why you think there are so many people who've been in this situation?
Sure will. The Innocence Project I am not all that familiar with. As chairman of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission, we oversee and grant money to the innocence clinics at 6 public law schools. The reason there are a lot, well, let me put it this way. During the last couple of years, the legislature created something called the Timothy Cole Exoneration Review Commission. I was on that, and the purpose of it was to come up with recommendations for the legislature for ways to make sure that people who are not guilty don't get in prison. And we did come up with recommendations that had to do with eyewitness identification, which is the biggest problem. And submitted those to the legislature, and most, if not all of them, were adopted. I found out last week, or a couple of weeks ago, that I'm going to be awarded an award for my participation in the Tim Cole Exoneration Review Commission, which is, the whole purpose of it was to address that issue.
Other questions? Debbie?
Yes, ma'am. I'm assuming that you have been in other forums with Mr. Bridges. Have you been in forums where y'all have both had an opportunity to visit? And what are the issues that has generated the most interest and discussion between the two of you? Does that make sense?
It does. I have been in other forums, but not with him. We have had tables side by side and petition signing parties, but I have not been at the same forum that he was at. I will tell you what generates the most questions among the other judges that are running for the Court of Criminal Appeals, because there's an open seat with 3 judges running. And I think mostly people are concerned that judges follow the law instead of making it up on their own. That is one of the big issues that we get asked about at virtually every forum that I go to. And that is, and most people say I'm a constitutional conservative, and I am. I mean, I really do have a track record. I have had liberals and anti-death penalty people trying to get me off the court for years. I have a target on my back, and it's because I don't just follow my own whim or anything else. It's because I follow the law.
Greg?
Gary from Denton County.
Gary?
Kind of following up on Debbie's question, can you just draw out some differences between you and your opponent, because your opponent's not here?
I don't know a lot about my opponent. He's been on the intermediate court for over 20 years, but I haven't found a lot of opinions, published opinions in criminal cases that he's written, so I really don't know much about him, even though I met him in '94. The biggest difference between me and really anybody else that would run would be my experience. It's a very challenging job because of the size of the docket, and it's challenging for anybody to come in. There's kind of a general wisdom at the court that new judges take about 2 years to get on track and figure out how things work. Doing the job of presiding judge on top of that, I don't know how anybody would do it.
Other questions? Joe?
Joe Barnett,
Sure.
did the commission or in the cases the court has considered, have y'all dealt with the issue of DNA evidence and the fact that that is not necessarily reliable for various reasons, which you may be familiar with? Could you comment on that?
We do deal with DNA evidence, and a year or 2 ago, we found out that some of the labs were not measuring or determining DNA cases the way they should have when there's mixed DNA samples. And what our court did, and this is Barbara Hervey, who's also on our court, took charge of this part, we figured out a way and worked with other people in the criminal justice system to notify people whose cases might be affected by that, if that's what we're talking about, the mixed DNA. And as chairman of the Indigent Defense Commission, we awarded grants to Harris County, Tarrant County, and Travis County to try to address the issues on their own. Harris County kind of took the position of working statewide, but Travis County wanted to do it differently, and Tarrant County wanted to do it differently. So yes, we have addressed it, and we've addressed it in a system-wide manner, and then specifically granting funds to help winnow out the cases that might be affected by this bad DNA testing.
Other questions? Ann?
Hi, I was just wondering if you could just speak to the Texas Commission charge of misconduct that maybe may have received in the 2009 or so.
I was, again, I would say this has a lot to do with there being a target on my back. There was a gentleman who goes after Republicans. He's the same one that went after Rick Perry, or one of the same ones. And there was an execution. This is what you're talking about. There was an execution scheduled, and the people who were representing the defendant did not get their pleading in on time, and they decided that would be a good opportunity to blame me for something. They did, and I answered the charges, had a 4-day trial eventually, and won in the trial court. I was exonerated. It turned out these people were lying about a lot of it. And the Commission on Judicial Conduct wanted me to have another trial because they said the appeal would be a whole nother trial from scratch. And a panel of appellate judges said no, the charges had to be dismissed. So if that's what you're talking about.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is Bridges still on the appellate court?
Yes, yes, sir.
And is he up for election this year, or is this an open run that
He's not up for election this year. This is an open, this is a
free
free
race?
ride.
Free race. If he doesn't win, then he's still on the court.
Yes, yes.
Are there other questions? Yes, Steve.
What has been your most significant case?
In recent years, the Rick Perry case. I was park clerk assigns cases, so I got that by the luck of the draw. And it is probably one of the most important cases, and I know when I wrote that opinion, I was looking at every single word. But there were First Amendment issues, and I am probably more protective of First Amendment issues than most of the people on our court, freedom of speech issues. And as you probably remember, we held that it was not a violation of the law to threaten to veto a bill or to veto a bill, and we dismissed the charges. We had another case out of Tarrant County, in fact, where I wrote a dissent, and I still think I was right. The court didn't agree with me, but it had to do with a parade in downtown Fort Worth, and this was about a 2015 case. I think the appeal was in 2016. And there was a group of people from the Baptist Church who were protesting at the parade, and at the end of the parade, they wanted to follow the members of the parade down about 8 city blocks, and the police wouldn't let them go. And it was clear from the record that they wouldn't let them go because of their religious beliefs. They even said that. And so two of the gentlemen stepped across, just gently stepped across the line and got arrested. And I said that was a violation of the First Amendment right to free speech, but the court disagreed.
Would you, yes, go ahead.
I'm Sharon, Denton County Republican Assembly. Would you mind just speaking to the ethics fine in 2013 that was settled?
Yes, no, I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
Again, we all have to file very complicated personal financial statements. My father had, for many years, overseen real estate and business interests on my behalf. I wasn't even aware of all of them, should have been. And so when I filed my ethics filings, I made lots and lots of mistakes, and I got charged with doing that for 2 years. And there were no underlying ethical issues. This was all just filling out the form wrong. And the form, it had things like, I owned a house that my brother lived in. It has nothing to do with bribery or ethical issues at all. And but you still have to fill them out right. And I didn't fill them out right, so eventually I settled and I paid a fine.
Sure, we normally give a candidate 2 minutes to summarize. Do you want to do that, or
I'd rather take questions if there are more questions.
are there questions? If not, we'll go to a vote. Because we have a standing vote, we used to do paper ballots, but we've asked the candidate to step out